Hi there, Coolsmartphone viewers. As part of the review of the OnePlus 10T, I would like to just quickly do a quick app loadout speed, just to give you some form of comparison. And for the purposes of this test, I'm going to be using my old faithful, the Google 6 Pro. So without further ado, let's dive into the test, and I'll give you some very brief conclusions afterwards. So the first part of the test I'm going to do is actually showcase the fingerprint reader. So 3, 2, 1, and you'll see the OnePlus 10T was slightly faster at opening up the home screen UI. This is not something that I'm surprised by, because the 6 Pro is synonymous for having quite a slow fingerprint reader. Now I'm going to mainly focus on the one home screen. I do have multiple home screens set up on both phones, and you can see that switching between them is, for the most part, pretty fluid. I've tried to set the phones up as similarly as possible. There's no open apps running in the background on either of them. So we'll start loading up maps. And then we're going to go into some other ones, and I'm just going to keep on loading up apps as I go through this process. And you can see that we are pretty close in terms of comparison. There's not a massive amount of lag between the two. So it was a good test. Loading up Netflix. Let's go on to the next screen and we'll try Spotify. So for the most part, the phones are very similar in terms of speed. There is times where the 6 Pro does seem to be that little bit quicker than the 10T, but then again the 10T also seems to have times where it's that a little bit faster. Now the only reason I can surmise for this is the 6 Pro, obviously being a Google device, Google have done a lot of optimization to allow this 6 Pro to be quicker at loading. Now what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to repeat opening some apps. Now these apps should, in theory, all open from cache, so they should be cached memory, so they shouldn't have to reload. And as we can see here, for the most part, that does seem to be happening. Oh, that was one I wasn't signed into, so let's just quickly sign into that one. Apologies about the sniffing, I do have a bit of a cold at the moment. So we'll try and get that as close a comparison as we can. And then we'll leave that one for now, go back into Windows Central. So from that very quick and unscientific test, you can see that although there is a lot more RAM and there's a much more powerful processor in the 10T from OnePlus, it doesn't seem to be making a massive amount of difference in terms of app loading speed. Now, there is one other area that I do want to test, and this is how quickly the phone will load a game. So for this, I'm just going to try and find one of my staple go-to games at the moment, which is Grand Mountain, and we'll give it a shot. I can't remember if I've actually tried Grand Mountain on the 10T yet, so it might go through a loading process, which it did look like it was going to do. So what we'll do is we'll just get logged in, and then what I'll do is I'll close these apps down, and I'm going to then reopen them again as if I was opening them for the first time, just to give you a fair test. We did notice a difference here with Grand Mountain in that it actually loads up the gaming UI that OnePlus have implemented onto this phone, whereas the Pixel 6 Pro does not have that. So if we just close these down, I'm just going to close all of the apps down so we've got as fair a test as possible with that same app. Okay, so you can see we're both clear on both phones. Let's find that game again. One thing I do wish that the OnePlus 10T could do is have this grid denser, as I find there's a lot more scrolling needed to get to a game that I want to get to, or get to an app I want to get to, which is a little bit annoying. So let's load up Grand Mountain again on both devices. You can see it's a much fairer test now, and they pretty much load up at the same time. So now that we've got a game loaded up, let's have a look and see what happens if we try and load up something else. Now, this is an app that I use a fair amount. It's Power Director. Now, Power Director is quite an intensive app as it's a video rendering app. Again, I'm not sure if this is something I've actually tested on the 10T yet, but we'll load it up and see, and you can see there that it's not. So what we'll do is we'll just get rid of that there, and then we'll let this finish it. So it's finished loading now, so we've now got the same loadout. Go down to it again and we'll load it again. As you can see, I'm finding it a lot more difficult to find apps on the 10T than I would on Pixel 6 Pro because of this increased need for scrolling. And that was a fail on that test because I clearly hadn't closed the apps down. Sorry about that. So there we go, Power Director on both devices. 1, 2, 3. They seem to both be loading at the same sort of speed. However, the 6 Pro was a little bit quicker to open up the app flash screen. So, difficult one to call on that, but I would say it is quite close. So there you have it, guys. The OnePlus 10T and the Google Pixel 6 Pro both seem to perform fairly closely. There was scenarios where the Pixel 6 was faster loading out, and there was then scenarios where the OnePlus 10T was faster at loading. Now, the reason I'm going to put forward for this, and I've not done any more thorough or more scientific research than what you saw, is that Google have done a lot to optimize the hardware and the software on the Tensor chipset found in the Google Pixel 6 Pro, whereas OnePlus are using an off-the-shelf component from Qualcomm in the form of the Snapdragon Gen 8 or 8 Gen 1. Can't remember the exact naming convention there. So they haven't optimized the hardware and the software as much, so they haven't fine-tuned it as much. So for me, this accounts for the performance similarities between what is technically a faster and more powerful chip with more RAM than we find on the 6 Pro. Regardless of that though, both of these phones are really, really fast performers. Both of them are great in terms of day-to-day use. I honestly, in normal use, I find it difficult to say which is faster and which is slower. I've been using this for a year now, near enough, and this one for the last couple of weeks. Apart from a couple of other bits that I mentioned in the full review, in terms of performance, I'm pretty happy with it. However, if you want to find out more about my thoughts on that, please do check out the full review, which is going to be linked in this video in the description, and also check out more content like this on Coolsmartphone.com, and you can follow and subscribe by clicking the appropriate buttons wherever they are. Thank you for watching this video as always, and I hope to see you on the next one. Cheers, goodbye.